Woke up this morning feeling kinda blue. A little sad, but I know just what to do. Whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh. I have learned that I can go to Jesus. He lifts me up whenever I need it. Whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh. When I'm worried, when I'm feeling down, that's when God comes through, turns it all around. Yeah, He gives me joy in every situation, keeps my spirits high, no matter what I'm facing. Oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh, whoa. I'm feeling better, God made all the difference. He's always here to listen. Whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh. He is my source, the one who gives me life. He is my God and He's good all the time. Whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh. When I'm worried, when I'm feeling down, that's when God comes through, turns it all around. Yeah, He gives me joy in every situation, keeps my spirits high, no matter what I'm facing. Oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh, whoa. When I'm worried, when I'm feeling down, that's when God comes through and turns it all around. Yeah, He gives me joy in every situation, keeps my spirits high, no matter what I'm facing.
Welcome to Kids Church Online. I'm so excited that you're here because we are going to tell a campfire story today. We're going to pretend that we can feel the warmth of a campfire all over the city, wherever you are. Feel it through your screen. We are going to gather around and hear a story about Jesus today, and it is very interesting. It's very exciting. Now let's do a quick recap of what we've heard for the last 2 weeks about Jesus. We heard a story about Jesus dying on the cross. He was arrested and He was put on the cross to die. We heard that Jesus rose again. He came back and He showed up to His disciples. Now, last week we heard about when Jesus showed up, that He talked to them and He gave them instructions to go and tell others about who He was. Now, today's story is in between Jesus showing up to the disciples in that basement and Jesus going back up to heaven. Because we know that Jesus doesn't stay on earth forever. He goes back up to heaven. Now that hasn't happened yet when this story occurred. This story talks about one other time when Jesus appeared to His disciples. So we're going to hear about that right now. All right, gather round, come sit close to the fire, because we are going to hear a story from the book of John about when Jesus appeared to His disciples again. Now, in this story, a lot of Jesus' disciples, including someone called Peter, who is very important in this story, they are out on a sea, the Sea of Galilee. Can you make a sea with your arms? Make the water waves. Imagine that you're there. They're in a boat and they're fishing with nets. So it's a little bit stinky, it's a little bit wet, and they are in a boat. Now, they have been trying to fish, but they don't catch anything the whole night. Does this remind you of a story that we have heard before? Way at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, before He went and traveled and talked to people, way before He was ever arrested and put on the cross, He gathered 12 disciples, 12 friends, to be with him. And some of those friends, including Peter, were out fishing. They didn't catch any fish all night. And then Jesus appeared to them and told them something very special. He told them to throw their nets on the other side of the boat. And they caught a lot of fish and realized that Jesus was very special and they wanted to spend time with him. Now that was a long time ago. That was years ago. Then Jesus was arrested and then put on the cross and then he died. He came back to life. He appeared to them. And now they're out fishing again. And they have spent all night and they didn't catch anything. So it's very similar to the story we heard before. It says, early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, don't you have any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat. There will be some fish." When they did, they could not pull the net into the boat. There were too many fish in it. Do you notice that the same thing that happened way before is happening again? Jesus told them, "Throw your nets on the other side of the boat." And when they did, they caught a lot of fish. Now, it says, the disciple Jesus loved, that's John. He always calls himself that in the gospel that he wrote, in the book of the Bible that he wrote. He calls himself the disciple Jesus loved. So John said to Simon Peter, "That is the Lord. That's Jesus." Now, Peter was super excited. He had taken his coat off, so he put it back on. And then you know what he did? He jumped out of the boat and swam to the shore to see Jesus. He was so excited that his friend had come to visit him again that he jumped out of the boat in his full clothing and swam to go see Jesus. Now the rest of the disciples followed in the boat. It says that when they landed on the shore, they saw a fire of burning coals, sort of like our campfire today. There were fish on it. There was also some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you've caught." So they brought it. Jesus said, "Come and have some breakfast." Now, none of the disciples, it says, asked, "Who are you?" Because they knew it was Jesus. They knew it was their friend, and they wanted to spend time and eat breakfast around a campfire with their friend Jesus. Now, Jesus and Peter have a very interesting conversation after this. After Jesus was arrested, before this story, Jesus told Peter something very scary, something very interesting. Jesus told Peter, "I know that you love me. I know that we're friends, but you are going to deny me 3 times. You are going to meet people after I'm arrested, and they're going to say, 'Did you know Jesus?' And Peter would say, 'No.'" And Peter was very shocked that Jesus would say this. Peter said, "You're my friend. I love you. I would never pretend that I haven't met you before." And then after Jesus got arrested, it happened. Peter denied him 3 times to 3 different people. They said, "Don't you know who Jesus is? Weren't you friends with Jesus?" And Peter said, No, I've never met Jesus. I don't even know him. I have no idea who you're talking about." So he betrayed his friend. He pretended that he didn't know Jesus, and he did not stick up for Jesus. So Peter and Jesus talk about this when Peter denied Jesus. So Peter is sitting there and talking to Peter, and he says, "Do you love me more than these others do?" Peter says, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus asks Peter 3 times whether Peter loves him, just like how Peter denied Jesus 3 times when he got arrested. And then Jesus gives Peter a very special task. He says, "Feed my sheep." What does that mean? I don't think that Jesus had real sheep that he wanted Peter to feed. He says that he wants Peter to go and tell others about Jesus. He wants Peter to feed his sheep, which means he wants Peter to tell others, to fill them, just like you get full of food, to fill them with stories about Jesus. He wanted Peter to go and start a church. He wanted Peter to go and tell others about who Jesus was. Now, he gets into this conversation with Peter about how people didn't like Jesus. People killed Jesus because of the story he was sharing. And so he was warning Peter that this is a big job and that he might get into some trouble. We know that Peter does because he actually died because he was telling others about Jesus. A lot of Jesus' disciples died because they were sharing the news about Jesus. However, in this story, when they're gathered around the fire and talking to Jesus and eating breakfast, eating fish and bread, Jesus gives Peter encouragement. Jesus forgives Peter. Peter really let his friend down because he denied that he ever knew him. And Jesus said, "I have a very special job for you. I still love you. I still care about you. And I know that you are a big part of God's plan." And so around the fire, sitting on the beach, Jesus encouraged Peter, he forgave Peter, and he gave Peter a very special task to go and tell others about Jesus. In our story today, we heard about a very special moment between Jesus and Peter. Now, even though Peter had done something disappointing, he had denied Jesus, he had pretended like he had never met him before, Jesus still reminded Peter that he had a very special role in God's plan and that Peter could go and tell others about Jesus because God would always forgive Peter for what he did. So that reminds me of our big idea for today, which talks about encouragement. It says, Jesus gives encouragement. Encouragement is kindness or good words, or it is giving a special job like Jesus did. Jesus reminded Peter that he had a special role in God's plan, and he encouraged him. Today, Jesus still encourages us and helps us find the right words and the right moments to tell others about Jesus, just like Peter did. If you've ever felt sad or lonely before, or you felt like people weren't being kind to you, then it's a good reminder for us that Jesus always encourages us, that he helps us when we feel sad or lonely, when we feel like we have disappointed others. Jesus encourages us and reminds us that he loves us so much more than we can ever imagine. That's why it's so special that Jesus gives us special encouragement and reminds us that God will always forgive us. Peter was given the special job to go and tell others about Jesus, and we are given the same job in the Bible. And it reminds me of our memory verse. So let's practice our memory verse all together, and let's practice the actions that help us remember the words just a little bit better. It starts with declaring, so we put our hands by our mouth. It says, if you declare with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's found in Romans 10, verse 9. Good job. All right, let's fold our hands and close our eyes and thank God for this story, thank him for this day, and that we can learn more about Jesus from the Bible. So let's pray. Father, I thank you for this day. I thank you for all of these kids. I thank you for the story of Peter, that even though he denied Jesus, that even though he pretended like they were never friends before, God, I thank you that you forgive him and that you forgive us when we make wrong choices too. I pray that you help give us encouragement when we're feeling sad, when we're feeling lonely, when we feel like we've disappointed others. I pray that you give us encouragement and that you help us with all of our challenges. In your name, everyone said, Amen. All right, it's time for another worship song. So let's get ready to sing and let's say goodbye to this lovely campfire that has kept us so warm today. All right, let's do another song.
Today's the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad.